Good evening, tributes, and welcome back to another Tales of the Hunger Games episode. My name is Robo, and I will be your host for today's video about After 100. Before we begin this episode, I'd like to thank Christian Blanco for creating the series in the first place, as well as Andrew Maclaine for creating all the wonderful art used in this video. I'd also like to thank Red Dragon for helping me edit and proofread this video. I also have two announcements to make. The first announcement will be that of a Discord server. I've created an After 100 exclusive Discord server, which is not the same as the one I mentioned a few videos ago. You are free to join it, and a link to it will be found in the description. I'd also like to say that when I reach 300 subscribers, I will be creating a video about Prick Ashley. It is going to be titled Never Gonna Prick You Up, and I'll be looking forward to singing, editing, and releasing that video. But without further ado, let's hop straight into this episode. After a cold morning spent in Districts 12 and 11, Aethrix Vonnegut, victor of the 107th Hunger Games, arrived in District 10, where it was much hotter. Mayor Pig welcomed Aethrix after she arrived and offered her some of the district's specialty steak before the reaping began. When she had finished her meal, Aethrix skipped the district tour and went directly to the reaping stage, where she oversaw the population entering their enclosures. Once Mayor Pig had given his speech, he stepped aside and allowed Aethrix to speak about how thankful she was for being a victor. When all the necessary speeches had concluded, Aethrix reached into the female reaping bowl to draw out a name. She smiled as she unfolded the paper and announced that 17-year-old Viscera Maddox had won the honor of being the female tribute. As usual, murmurs rippled through the crowd as many eyes focused on a girl with neat brown hair and an orange dress. Viscera began to weep as peacekeepers approached her. When Viscera was safely on the stage, Aethrix shook her hand and approached the male reaping bowl. After picking out a name, Aethrix announced that 18-year-old Lasso Stample had won the honor of being the male tribute for District 10 this year. Loud shouts and a light scuffle broke out among the male reaping enclosure, not bowl, when Aethrix said this, which caused peacekeepers to enter the enclosure and break up the fight. Soon afterwards, they emerged with a bruised young man with a dark orange suit and messy hair. Lasso was quickly brought to the stage amidst more light shouting from the male reaping enclosure. On the stage, Lauren commented that Lasso had a poor selection of clothing. However, she approved of Viscera's dress. Lasso and Viscera were then ushered into the town hall, where they met their parents. Lasso was visited by his father and brother. Instead of spending quality time comforting each other, Lasso quickly told them how to best herd the cattle and to sell his belongings for money after he left. This seemed to make both of them cry once Lasso left for the train. As for Viscera, she was visited by her mother and father. The three of them embraced upon seeing each other and did not say much, but they seemed to silently agree that Viscera would not be returning home. She was subsequently taken to the train station, where she met Lasso already waiting on the train with their mentors. Casco Astriana and Michelle Onassis, victors of the 98th and 54th Hunger Games respectively, were sitting on opposite ends of the long table when Lasso boarded the train. Casco motioned for him to sit with him, and a short while later, Viscera entered the carriage, where she was told by Michelle to sit down. When Viscera had shook hands with Michelle, Casco led Lasso to a private carriage. In that private carriage, Casco informed Lasso of the upcoming week and worked on lifting weights with him. It was noticed that Casco did not answer any of Lasso's questions about Michelle and told him to keep training harder. Meanwhile, Michelle had given Viscera a variety of pictures and told her to identify the plants shown. Although Viscera had some difficulty at first, after Michelle had helped her, she was able to identify all of them and their properties when the train entered Snow Station. Michelle descended the train first. Due to her old age, she headed straight to the limousine without meeting any capital citizens. On the other hand, Casco led Lasso around to some of his friends, who he chatted with. Lasso appeared bored by Casco's rather rude small talk, and therefore headed over to Viscera, who was heading towards the limousine. Lasso formally introduced himself and began to chat with Viscera. By the time they had arrived at the limousine, Viscera seemed more comfortable with Lasso as she introduced herself. At the accommodation center, Viscera and Lasso were led by Casco to their apartments. Casco prohibited Viscera from talking to Lasso and locked Lasso's apartment room door, while Viscera waited for Michelle in the other apartment room. Casco called the stylist for District 10, Snowflake Dovecote, into the apartment building. Snowflake frowned upon seeing Viscera's skinnier build contrasting with Lasso's muscles. After a while of thinking, she sketched an outfit design that was made to resemble roast beef. Casco clearly disapproved of the outfit, but allowed it anyway. He then told Snowflake to work on designing before running out of the apartment. As Snowflake started weaving fabrics together, an 83-year-old Michelle Onassis entered. Michelle was very happy to see Snowflake's designs and told her that they looked fabulous. Snowflake thanked Michelle before Michelle turned on the TV, which was now broadcasting the reaping of District 4. Aethrix had already finished giving her speech and quickly reached into the female reaping bowl. After pulling out a name, she proudly announced that 17-year-old Drizzle Monroe had won the honor of representing District 4 this year. When the camera found her, Drizzle gasped in shock and covered her mouth, but this was no use, as the peacekeepers seemed familiar with her. She was promptly taken to the stage, where she was forced to shake hands with Aethrix. Afterwards, Aethrix reached into the male reaping bowl, where she pulled out a name and announced that 17-year-old Wade Seymour had won the title of Male Tribute for District 4 this year. Like Drizzle, the camera found Wade very quickly. Wade sighed upon seeing his face on the big screen and quickly entered the aisle without needing to be escorted by peacekeepers. Once he was on the stage, Wade shook hands with Aethrix and stood quietly by her side. Mayor Flanagan then stepped forward to dismiss the population. Once in the town hall, Drizzle was visited by her parents, who wished her luck in the games without much other commentary. She was also visited by her niece, who made her promise to win. Drizzle did not seem very optimistic about her odds, and therefore she told her family to use her tesserae. She also hastily informed them about the recipe to make her special fish bait. In the other room, Wade met his father, mother, and younger sister. The four of them embraced without talking. When it was time to go, Wade wished his father, mother, and sister best of luck in their boat crafting endeavors, before gloomily walking down to the train station. On the train, Zale Herricks, victor of the 102nd Hunger Games, met the tributes. Zale politely shook hands with both of them, and motioned for them to sit down. The two tributes complied, before Zale told them that Limerick Manx, victor of the 88th Hunger Games, had some business in the capital. She informed them that Limerick would be waiting for them in the capital. When neither Wade, nor Drizzle responded, Zale sighed and pulled out a book. She then gave the two a pen and a piece of paper, before telling them to write the names of all the fish on the paper. Wade and Drizzle worked together to complete this task successfully. Pleased, Zale informed them that the train would be entering Snow Station soon, and to be prepared for the crowds. Instead of Zale opening the carriage door, Limerick opened it from the outside and introduced himself to the tributes. He then led them down the stairs to the crowd, where they posed and took photos with the citizens. Zale met a group of teenagers, with whom she chatted politely with. But once she noticed Limerick ushering the tributes towards the limousine, she followed suit. At the apartment center, Limerick was clearly displeased to see Barona Harrington waiting. Barona nodded curtly towards Limerick and Zale before beginning to take measurements without saying another word. After she had finished sketching, Barona showed Zale and Limerick what she had. Barona had sketched a dark blue suit and dress, along with matching seashell fascinators for the tributes. Limerick proposed removing the fascinator for Wade, but before he could tell Barona why, Zale had reached over and signed the sketch, therefore giving Barona approval. Before the chariot parade was held, President Cardew went missing. At the time, nobody knew many details about his disappearance, but a crew of highly trained peacekeepers known as the Gull 5 were sent out to search for him. The 5 peacekeepers were President Cardew's personal guards, so understandably, they went to search for him. For the time being, a man by the name of Soldier Flickerman was appointed to temporarily replace President Cardew. The parade was held without any fear about the capital, as Pan Am was informed that President Cardew was on a business trip to meet with other nations. Before the parade, Wade and Drizzle seemed uncomfortable in their outfits. However, they agreed to wear them after Limerick told them about the importance of the parade. As they chatted on their carriage, Winston of 1 wandered around the loading zone, looking at tributes. When he reached the carriage for District 10, Casco told him to head back to his carriage up front. However, he ignored Casco and began to stare at Lasso and Viscera. When Casco yelled at Winston a second time, Winston chuckled and asked what power Casco had. This seemed to greatly enrage Casco, and therefore he slapped Winston. This caused a fight to break out, as Winston tried to get back up and attack Casco even further. However, Mirai Kobayashi, victor of the 94th Hunger Games, pulled Winston back before he could do or receive any extra harm. Mirai scolded Winston for doing such a thing, which made Winston growl angrily, while Zashio Throne, victor of the 101st Hunger Games and terminus of 2, laughed slightly. The chariot call then sounded, which caused Casco to remind the tributes from 10 to stand tall. Leading off the parade, Aurora and Winston, both of 1, raised hands and waved to the crowd, but Wolf Anderson quickly asked why Winston was so badly bruised on his cheek. Cameras quickly turned away from Winston and focused on Terminus and Roxanne, both of 2, who were dressed in sparkling silver tunics. A couple chariots down the parade, Wade and Drizzle raised their hands nervously and waved to the crowd. Drizzle even tossed her seashell towards the crowd, but unfortunately for her, a group of District 2 fans had been sitting where it landed, and therefore tried to avoid getting hit by the seashell, while shouting curses at her. Wade seemed nervous throughout the parade, and was noticed to have sweat a lot. That night, the pair from 5 were voted best dressed as the solar panels attached to their outfits captured the moonlight and powered the lights attached to their bodies. In the morning, mentors informed tributes that training had been cancelled due to an extra-large water leak in the training center. Instead, mentors were allowed to bring weapons into the apartment in order to help the tributes train. Inside sources later confirmed that the training center did not have a water leak, but was instead closed due to massive amounts of stolen weapons and equipment, which was allegedly taken during the chariot parade. Investigation of security footage showed the weapons vanishing for some unknown reason. This is supposedly due to an unidentified individual hacking into the camera room and making the camera freeze until the theft was over. Once the theft was complete, the cameras unfroze and allowed peacekeepers to view the center as normal. Highly classified drone footage showed a man with a slight limp entering the control room with a mask on. Peacekeepers were unable to identify this man. However, warnings were posted throughout the capital, reminding citizens to be careful. That day, cameras in Casco and Michelle's apartment froze as well, which caused peacekeepers to be sent into the room for supervision. Casco and Michelle appeared comfortable with these peacekeepers, and therefore showed the tributes videos of past games on their screen. Surprisingly, the name CP was mentioned a lot during the video reviews, but the peacekeepers at that time were known to have passed off the name as that of a past tribute. Further evidence reveals that CP was never a tribute, but in fact a code name, which was important to the events of the following year. We will not discuss this further for now. Despite this suspicious content, the peacekeepers present within the room did not seem to care. In fact, they allegedly pulled out a bottle of beer and inebriated themselves before the end of the day. In the other room, Limerick had collected a bundle of tridents from some of his friends in the capital. Limerick handed some to Zale before teaching Wade how to throw one with maximum power. To his surprise, Wade learned quickly and was able to throw harder than Limerick could by lunchtime. On the other hand, Drizzle had more trouble throwing the trident. Zale did her best to assist Drizzle, however Drizzle was unable to throw harder than an average 13-year-old boy in District 4 by lunchtime. After eating a specially prepared meal of shrimp, lobster, and fish, Zale and Limerick pulled out their screens and watched replays of past games. Just like CP, the name Beish was mentioned very frequently, but the peacekeepers monitoring the camera room dismissed this when they heard Zale state that Beish was a District 4 male tribute in the second ever Hunger Games. Later research states that this is entirely not true, but that the District 4 male tribute, Vinny Shigwell, won the games. This lack of security played a big factor in the events of the next year. Understandably, there were no training score assessments this year. That night, news spread throughout the capital of massive robberies. These robberies were allegedly linked to many key supply factors within the capital. This caused many shortages of various goods within the capital at this time. Throughout the districts, there was also much rioting and protesting occurring. Many citizens refused to go to work, which caused peacekeepers to openly execute and arrest many district rebels. Luckily, the interviews were able to be held as normal. However, because of safety reasons, President Flickerman did not allow anyone to view the interviews live. Instead, Dalton Studios was filled with a lot of camera equipment, which this tribute spoke towards. The career interviews went by very strongly, as they reassured capital citizens during this difficult time to be strong and stay safe. Terminus of Two even told citizens that he would help the capital once he emerged victorious from the arena. When it was Drizzle's turn to be interviewed, she seemed very unconfident in her speaking skills. Instead of answering Lauren's questions properly, Drizzle simply replied by saying yes or no. Wade's interview followed, and it was not much better. Wade stuttered a lot when answering the questions and spent a lot of time thinking. When he left the stage, it was obvious that he was sweating very heavily. After a few more very bland interviews, Viscera took the stage. Surprisingly, Viscera had a lot of confidence in her voice and was able to make a good impression on Lauren before her interview ended. Throughout her interview, she spoke about her work in the cattle ranching industry of District 10, as well as her family, whom she loved dearly. After Viscera had left the stage, Lauren asked for Lasso. Lasso was dressed in a golden suit and cowboy hat, which she politely tipped to Lauren before he sat down. Lasso asked Lauren what she thought of her outfit, which Lauren replied looked magnificent. He seemed happy with what Lauren said, and therefore he answered Lauren's interview questions with charm and delight. This clearly pleased Lauren, and when the interview ended, it was clear Lasso was one of Lauren's favorite tributes. Once Injectio of 12 had left the stage, Game Maker Blanco walked on stage. Although there was no audience, many citizens stepped onto their porches and clapped, banged pots, or cheered for Game Maker Blanco, as it was his last year game making. He smiled as Lauren shook his hand and sat down. This year, his interview extended for a full half hour. Although he did not give any arena hints, he did hint at a lot of green and a lot of deadly traps throughout the games. When he had left the stage, Lauren smiled towards the cameras and asked everyone to support Game Maker Blanco, stay safe, and enjoy the Hunger Games. The following morning, a light rain started within the capital. However, the tributes had already been transported to the faraway arena, which was not affected by the rain. Within the holding rooms, Limerick and Wade embraced for a long time. Limerick reminded Wade who he was and who he was representing, before wishing him luck. Wade was seen to tear up slightly as he entered his tube. In another launch room, Drizzle and Zale had launched into a tight hug. Drizzle thanked Zale for her support over the days. Zale cried slightly as Drizzle's tube closed. Meanwhile, Viscera was visited by Michelle. Michelle seemed very despondent when she told Viscera that she had to win. She then shouted a lot of obscenities at the Capitol and stated that if Viscera didn't win, Michelle herself would not be able to meet another District 10 female victor. Viscera understood Michelle and comforted her. However, as Michelle began to talk about Tiffany Vaxler, victor of the 69th Hunger Games, peacekeepers entered the holding room and forced Viscera into her tube. What happened next is not known, but all mentors were ordered to stay inside the holding rooms. Michelle was never seen again. Lasso and Casco both seemed very shocked at the announcement, telling mentors to stay within the holding rooms. When Casco heard this announcement, however, he heard an old woman's voice gasping outside, which caused him to run over to the door and shout Michelle's name. Casco grew very angry as he was unable to open the locked door. Therefore, he began to smash the door with all his might. Another announcement was made, which told mentors that an unidentified old woman had managed to enter the holding rooms, and that mentors should be calm. This further enraged Casco, as he called the Capitol fucking liars. Lasso seemed shocked and asked Casco if he was okay. However, Casco simply yelled at him to help him destroy the door. Lasso ran over and began to smash at the door with Casco. But before they were able to break down the door, an announcement moved into that holding room specifically. This time, the voice of President Flickerman informed Casco to escort Lasso into the tube, or else there would be trouble. Casco did not listen, but instead stuck his middle finger up at the camera. He then ran back and began to punch the door with Lasso. This seemed to be too far, as at that moment, the door opened and saw Casco and Lasso fall to the ground. Lead Peacekeeper Dominus Barrett and his squadron fired 28 bullets at Casco and Lasso, which killed them both instantly. This incident was heard in other holding rooms, which alarmed many other tributes. However, an announcement was made telling all tributes and mentors to be calm. Amidst all the chaos, the tributes, who were all in their tubes, rose into the cornucopia clearing. This year's games, the 108th Games, or year 122, took place in Hell Hill. This year, the cornucopia lay in the center of a lush green field and hill area. Surrounding it, there was a lot of grassland, which allowed tributes to spot almost anyone over the plain area. The arena was split into sectors by a lowercase T-shaped path. Towards the north of the cornucopia, there was a small forest, which contained small trees that were easy to climb. If one was standing on the path and facing the top of the hill, the cornucopia would lay on the right of one's point of view. Within the cornucopia, there lay a myriad of weapons, food, water, and backpacks. Instead of a countdown, Game Maker Blanco informed tributes that the boy from District 10 had escaped his holding room and spotted other tributes. Because this was cheating, he had been withdrawn. When Viscera heard this, she yelled loudly and called Game Maker Blanco a liar. However, he began the countdown almost immediately afterwards and ignored Viscera. At this time, many tributes seemed shocked. However, the arena's audio was muted, and cameras turned away from Viscera as she shouted misinformation at other tributes. When the gong rang out, Terminus of 2 immediately sprinted over and attempted to tackle Viscera. However, Roxanne of 2 had reached the cornucopia, where she picked up a knife and threw it at Terminus. Viscera screamed and attempted to run away from Terminus. However, the knife lodged into his head, which saw him fall to the ground in agony. Winston and Aurora, both of one, then converged at the cornucopia, where they began to protect it. Viscera ran to the cornucopia and picked up a sword, miraculously without being noticed by the careers. She then sprinted forward and picked up a water bottle before running away towards the forests. Drizzle, of 4, had frozen on her podium after the gong rang out, presumably because of Viscera's shouts during the countdown. However, she recovered in time to see Winston stabbing the girl from 3 in the heart. Drizzle realized the danger and spotted a trident at the back wall of the cornucopia. Drizzle immediately began to run towards the trident, but she looked to see Wade fighting Nash of 6 at the mouth. Drizzle shouted Wade's name. However, Wade did not look towards Drizzle and focused on getting his spear through Nash's chest. Drizzle screamed and ran towards the tridents, however tripped over the dead bodies of the tributes from 5, who had died together. She weaved through the pools of blood and bodies until she reached the tridents. From there, she picked up one and gasped upon seeing Aurora of 1 looking at her. Drizzle thrust the trident forward, however it did not hit Aurora. Drizzle gasped upon again seeing that Aurora had not attracted Drizzle, and instead ran over to kill a much burlier male tribute from 7. Drizzle breathed out in relief, before running towards Wade, who was now being pinned down on the ground by Nash. Wade's hand was cut multiple times as Nash attempted to stab him. However, Drizzle speared Nash in the head before he could finish off Wade. Drizzle then picked up a nearby backpack, took Wade's hand, and ran away. Viscera had taken her sword into the forest with her, where she climbed a small tree. Inside the tree, she drank some water and quietly looked for a camera. When she finally found a camera, she shouted a bunch of obscenities at the Capitol, as well as something about death. However, the cameras did not focus on her, as well as something about... However, the cameras did not focus on her. It was known that Viscera spent the remainder of the day in the tree, resting. Wade and Drizzle had run to the top of the hill, where they were able to see the tributes fleeing the cornucopia in all directions. Drizzle pointed out the couriers, who had regrouped at the cornucopia, and were discussing where to go. Wade suggested that they keep traveling over the hill and find a source of shelter. Drizzle agreed, but asked Wade if his hand was okay. He looked at his hand and appeared not to mind the deep gash Nash had made in it. Drizzle, however, looked worried and decided to open the backpack. Inside, there was a small knife, an empty water bottle, and some dried meat. There was no sign of medicine of any kind. Wade sighed upon seeing this. However, he told Drizzle that he would be fine. Therefore, the pair left the arena and traveled further away from the cornucopia, until they were dangerously close to the perimeter. At the perimeter, Drizzle pointed out multiple holes within the ground. Wade seemed curious as to what was inside these holes, and therefore approached for a closer look. At that moment, Drizzle screamed and pulled Wade away from the hole. Wade was about to ask why she did this when a large mole emerged from the hole and bared its fanged teeth at Wade. Although normal moles did not have teeth, these capital-bred mutts had been genetically engineered to have sharp fangs that could easily pierce wood, not to mention human skin. Wade screamed and ran away with Drizzle. However, they quickly saw more moles coming out of smaller holes that they had not noticed earlier. The moles crawled out of these holes and began scrambling towards the tributes from 4. Wade shouted at Drizzle and took the trident from her hand. He then began to stab at the moles. Drizzle seemed to understand and quickly took out the small knife from the backpack. Drizzle tried to stab the moles. However, the extremely fast reflexes engineered into their heads allowed them to dodge Drizzle's swipes. Therefore, Lauren and Khen laughed as Drizzle began to play a mini-game of whack-a-mole. Wade shouted at Drizzle to run as he smacked his trident down on the moles. Upon realizing that fighting them off would be useless, Drizzle and Wade began to run and hope that the moles would not attack them. They were fortunate that the moles had not created underground tunnels that allowed them to reach anywhere out of their designated area. When Wade and Drizzle stopped to catch their breath, a cannon sounded. This cannon belonged to the girl from 12, after she had tripped over a molehole and smacked her head. This led to a gruesome scene of her getting devoured alive by the moles. Viewers also noticed that the pair from 4 had completely ignored the 6 bloodbath cannons. However, they seemed shocked to hear the girl from 12's cannon. Throughout the remainder of the first day, game makers only occasionally turned their cameras to Viscera, as she frequently launched into tirades about the Capitol. Viscera screamed and went hysterical upon hearing the 6 bloodbath cannons, as well as the girl from 12's cannon. Viscera began screaming and shouting obscenities at President Flickerman, Game Maker Blanco, and the rest of the Capitol. This led to cameras turning away from her and focusing on the courier pack, who were roaming the arena and following the screams of other tributes. As night fell upon the arena, Horn of Plenty played, preceding the portraits of Terminus of 2, the girl from 3, both tributes from 5, Nash of 6, the boy from 7, and the girl from 12. The fact that Lasso's portrait was not shown caused speculation around the Capitol. However, Lauren suggested that this was because he had been withdrawn. When Viscera woke up, she was immediately swarmed by ravens. Like all other mutts in the arena, these ravens were bred genetically in a Capitol lab. A quick examination by Lauren revealed that these ravens each had numbered collars, which had allowed the game makers to identify which ravens were the strongest and required the most caution in handling. It immediately became clear that the five ravens were the most dominant. A raven with the large number 8 around its collar had flown directly towards Viscera and began pecking at her viciously. This was followed by a raven with the number 9 and the number 89. Viscera screamed and jumped out of the tree after grabbing her sword and water, while apologizing to the capital. After a while of getting chased by the ravens, she suddenly turned around and slashed the unkindness. This led to the lead raven of 8 falling into a pool of blood. Viscera continued to slash at the unkindness until most of them had fallen. Although she was pecked multiple times by 9 and 89, she was able to take out the remainder of the small unkindness. Viscera was all very pleased with herself as she looked towards the ravens lying on the ground. She then returned to her hiding spot. The previous night, Wade had found a small field of tall grass, which allowed them to rest there for the night. When Wade woke Drizzle the following morning, the two each ate a single piece of the dried meat strips. Drizzle offered to look at Wade's hand and was shocked to see that it had turned purple. Wade insisted that he was okay. However, before Drizzle could argue back, a parachute floated down. Drizzle quickly unwrapped it and told Wade that it contained bandages. Wade thanked the sky and quickly wrapped them around his hand. Immediately, he announced that he could feel the capital medicine working on his hand, but this relief was cut short when a small tower of falcons appeared through the field. Wade shouted at Drizzle to watch out, but Drizzle was already running with the supplies. Wade picked up the trident and began to run. Lauren's close-up revealed that these falcons also had collars attached to them, and like the ravens, the collars of these falcons had numbers, which were supposed to help game makers identify the powerful ones apart from the remainder of the tower. A falcon with the number 2 engraved on its collar led the tower, along with one assigned number 8. These falcons circled Drizzle and Wade until they made a ring around their heads. Drizzle and Wade continued to run until they were within 500 meters of the cornucopia. The falcons continued to circle Drizzle and Wade until a cannon sounded. This seemed to be the cue for the falcons to attack, as the tower immediately swooped down towards the two and began to peck viciously. Wade thrust the trident through the air, while Drizzle attempted to slash with her knife. Wade was clearly more successful, as he took out a third of the small tower with his trident, while Drizzle was only able to stab a few. Fortunately for them, the falcons were not programmed to be very strong, and therefore, they were able to take them out easily. The two then agreed to investigate the cannon, which belonged to the boy from 11. Traveling through the fields, Drizzle and Wade noticed a lot of carnage after the boy from 11 had been attacked by a fierce group of ospreys. While looking down, Drizzle suddenly pulled Wade down and pointed at an osprey that had just flown over their heads. Unbeknownst to the tributes, the mutts were programmed to attack only their designated targets and to leave other tributes alone. Wade and Drizzle, who were hiding behind a large cluster of bushes, gasped and grew eerily silent as the osprey perched near them. Up close, the osprey had a collar with the number 3 engraved in it. Drizzle looked at the collar and quickly pointed to a spear, which the boy from 11 had dropped. Wade mouthed that he was going to get it, and before he could be stopped, he had run into the open and picked up the spear. This time, an osprey flew towards him and started pecking him. Wade speared it through the head, which saw its number 14 collar fly off. Wade looked carefully at the collar. However, when the number 3 osprey began to fly towards him, he called Drizzle over and the pair ran towards the cornucopia. From her tree in the forest, Viscera noticed the four was fighting, but did not seem to care much. From her vantage spot, she was also able to see the couriers, who had traveled to the east side of the arena. Viscera noticed that the couriers had also been attacked, but this time by eagles. Aurora and Winston, both of one, had fought off most of the eagles. However, Roxanne of 2 seemed to be struggling to fight off her share. Although she had been drenched in lots of blood, Roxanne swung furiously at the birds until she heard Winston shout something. Roxanne slashed at the eagles one more time until a spear flew through the air and killed the eagle. she was trying to fight off. Viewers watched curiously as Roxanne looked at the 1 engraved in its collar. At that moment, Roxanne finally thought to turn her head and was immediately decapitated by a buccaneer riding a goat. Many capital citizens gasped at these unusual mutts. However, Game Maker Blanco later explained that these pirate-like mutts were monkeys bred not to have skin. Or fur. These were among the lead discoveries in capital science on track to serve as human mutts within the games. The goat mutt also wore a collar, which had the number 12 engraved in it. Unlike the other mutts seen in the arena, the pirate mutts had numbers written on their hats. The pirate mutt riding the goat had a 12 written on it. The remainder of the pirates did not have steeds, but instead held cutlasses and walked on foot. When Roxanne's cannon sounded, Drizzle and Wade gasped and pointed towards the cornucopia area, where they noticed the hovercraft approaching. Both Drizzle and Wade questioned where they should head next, but at that moment, a low rumbling sound was heard from the center of the arena. Slowly, a large hole opened up, followed by 2 cannons. These cannons belonged to the tributes from 8, who had been resting near the center, and when the hole opened up, they had fallen into it and died after hitting the ground too hard. The large hole was now the size of a lake, and unsurprisingly, water filled the hole from a large chute underground. A force field was also erected around the lake, which prevented tributes from accessing this lake while it was being filled. Once the lake was fully filled, the force field was disabled, and tributes were allowed to access it however they liked. Drizzle and Wade noticed the lake and both seemed excited to see a source of water in the arena. Therefore, they ate some more dried meat for lunch and ran to the lake. By the lake, Drizzle and Wade recounted the deaths of the game so far. With 12 tributes gone, Wade told Drizzle that they should get supplies and prepare for the upcoming finale. But Drizzle ignored Wade and pointed into the water. Several dolphins became visible swimming around underneath the surface, and the bands around their fins were visible even in the dark water. Drizzle exclaimed to Wade that they could swim with dolphins, and before Wade could stop her, she had jumped into the water. He immediately shouted at Drizzle to come out, which proved to be a smart decision, as the dolphins immediately circled Drizzle and began to bite at her. Drizzle screamed multiple times at Wade, who had picked up the spear. Wade took careful aim and threw the spear at the dolphins, taking out a large one with the number 25 on its fin bracelet. Drizzle screamed again, when the dolphin's blood leaked into her face. However, Wade sighed upon realizing that Drizzle would not survive the dolphins. He therefore picked up the trident and backpack before performing a 3-finger salute. Shortly afterwards, a dolphin with the number 1 on its bracelet pulled Drizzle underwater and drowned her. When Mascara heard this cannon, she jolted awake from her short nap in the tree, but upon seeing the hovercraft retrieving the body from the lake, she dozed back off and fell asleep for the night. Meanwhile, Wade had discovered a bush-filled area with many plants and vegetation growing around and decided to rest there for the night. At midnight, Horn of Plenty played louder than usual as the portraits of Roxanne of 2, Drizzle of 4, both tributes from 8, and the boy from 11 were shown in the sky. This left 12 tributes remaining. In the morning, Game Maker Blanco made an announcement in which he congratulated the 12 tributes on surviving the first day. He then announced that in 30 minutes, Stampeding Buffalo would be released into the arena, and the only way to avoid the deranged buffalo would be to wear a bright yellow vest in the cornucopia. Khen explained that the buffalo had been conditioned to fear the bright yellow color of the vests. Viscera immediately leaped from her tree, finished the remainder of her water, picked up her sword, and began to run towards the cornucopia. Once near the cornucopia, she heard a cannon sound and gasped, before burying half her body underneath some dirt. Viscera seemed very scared as she watched Winston and Aurora of 1 both walk right by her, but did not notice her, hidden in the grass. When Wade heard the announcement, he seemed very angry with himself and walked over to the lake. But upon seeing bubbles rising to the surface, he did not approach it. Wade quietly begged for water, and surprisingly, a parachute fell down containing a large bottle of water. Although he seemed shocked, he ran towards the sponsors who sent him this expensive bottle and towards the cornucopia. When 30 minutes had elapsed, a horn blared out from the cornucopia, which preceded a small platform rising with vests. Winston and Aurora both ran towards the vests and snatched up the vests. They then taunted the other tributes to come out and fight them. Injectio of 12 sprinted forward from behind the cornucopia and towards the ones. Unfortunately for him, Aurora turned around and kicked him in the genitals. Injectio shouted in pain and fell to the ground beside the cornucopia. In this time, Wade had sprinted towards the cornucopia, but discovered Lenovo of 3 running towards him with a spear. Wade spotted Lenovo and turned to face him, before pulling out his trident. This did not seem to distract Lenovo, as many viewers cheered as Wade and Lenovo attempted to stab each other multiple times. At first, Lenovo had forced Wade over his back. However, Wade used his trident to knock Lenovo's spear out of his hand. An unarmed Lenovo then attempted to punch Wade in the face, but Wade was able to move his head to the side, causing the punch to catch him in the cheek. Wade then smacked the end of his trident into Lenovo's face, causing him to bleed. In this moment, Wade got up, picked up his trident, and stabbed Lenovo through the head, sounding a cannon. Wade, who was now bleeding from the cheek, swore and hastily ran to the cornucopia. Meanwhile, Zesty and Cookie, both of 9, had run towards the ones together, each armed with a knife. Spotting a chance, Virginia of 6 sprinted into the cornucopia clearing from the north, while Daintree of 7 entered from the eastern side. This seemed to overwhelm Winston and Aurora, but years of career training was not wasted, as Winston and Aurora both took on different opponents. Aurora threw a knife at Daintree, which lodged into her heart. Daintree coughed out blood and collapsed, while Winston tackled Virginia and stabbed her in the spine multiple times. During this fight, Viscera had run forward and thrust her sword through Injectio's head, sounding his cannon. She apologized and quickly ran to the table, where she picked up a vest. After quickly putting this on, she began to run, but met Date on the way out. The two girls looked at each other in fear. However, Date of 11 ignored Viscera and ran towards the cornucopia. This caused Viscera relief as she ran out of the cornucopia clearing and through the tall grass until she reached the forest where she had hidden earlier. Khen wondered aloud why no other tributes had entered the forest, to which Lauren replied that Viscera could simply have been lucky. As the carnage erupted around the cornucopia, Wade had sworn many times upon hearing the cannon sounded, but as he entered the cornucopia clearing, he sprinted forwards and thrust his trident through the chest of Aurora. This clearly caught Winston off guard, and Wade was able to grab a vest while Winston was tackled by Zesty. While Zayd sprinted away from the cornucopia, Winston picked up his knife and stabbed Zesty in the chest, which Don stopped attempting to punch Winston and fell to the ground in a pool of blood. The immunity vest chase clearly took out much more tributes than the game makers anticipated, and with only 5 tributes remaining, game maker Blanco decided to give them some leeway. At nighttime, the portraits of Aurora of 1, Lenovo of 3, Virginia of 6, Daintree of 7, Zesty of 9, and Injectio of 12 were shown in the sky, leaving Winston of 1, Wade of 4, Cookie of 9, Viscera of 10, and Date of 11 remaining. In the morning, Viscera awoke after a reckless night of sleep in the tree. With only 5 tributes left, Viscera sharpened her sword and quietly begged for food. Unsurprisingly, no food came. She then climbed down from the tree, but found it very difficult to walk on the ground, due to the dirt being trampled by the buffalo the previous night. This seemed to give her an idea. Using her sword as a shovel, Viscera began to shovel the dirt so that it became increasingly difficult to walk on. When she was done, she pulled down her pants and urinated on the ground. This disgusted capital citizens as cameras turned away. This was also very fortunate, as Viscera happened to burst into tears a few moments later and shout curses at the Capitol. Meanwhile, Wade had awoken by the lake and seemed pleased with his supplies. After carefully looking to see that the buffalo were gone, he removed his vest and drank some water and ate some meat. He then polished his trident until a low roar was heard from his left. Wade turned around to see a jaguar pounce towards him, and only speared it with its trident just in time. The jaguar, fitted with a collar number 16, died instantly, leaving Wade to look around quickly if there were any other mutts around. Luckily for him, only one jaguar had been sent to attack him. Wade quickly panicked and gathered his supplies before hearing a cannon boom out. After Wade had killed the jaguar, cameras cut to Viscera, who had created a very basic mud pit. When she noticed Cookie of 9 coming in her direction, Viscera hid in her tree until Cookie had reached the forest. Upon seeing the trees within, Cookie was heard to exclaim why no tributes had reached the forest. This made Viscera smile as she leaped down from the tree and apologized to Cookie. Cookie screamed and tried to run, but her feet quickly got stuck in the dirt. Viscera then slashed her head off her neck before bursting into tears and insulting the Capitol. When the hovercraft came to retrieve Cookie's body, Viscera picked up Cookie's fruit bag and knife before leaving the forest and traveling towards the cornucopia. Throughout the day, the other tributes were attacked by various other mutts. Winston encountered a pack of rams which charged him. A ram with the number 5 on its collar seemed more intent on defending the herd from Winston's sword swiping, while a ram with the number 10 on its collar charged at Winston. Winston was able to take out the rams easily without much difficulty. Date of 11 was attacked by a bear, however she was lucky to find a stray tree, which she climbed to avoid it. Viscera was also met by a Bengal tiger, but surprisingly the tiger did not attack her. Instead, it seemed scared of Viscera and bounded off before Viscera knew she had been swatted by a tiger. The game makers were unable to explain this either, and when they released cardinals, a lion, and a panther, none of them attacked Viscera. This led to them giving up, and night quickly fell on the arena, with no further action occurring, except for Winston, who was stabbing a tree with his sword. At night, the portraits of Cookie of 9 was shown, which left Winston of 1, Wade of 4, Viscera of 10, and Date of 11. In the morning, crashes were heard from outside the arena, which sounded like someone was attempting to break into the arena. Game Maker Blanco told tributes that they had 30 minutes to reach the cornucopia, or else a lightning strike would be drawn to their trackers. He then ended his announcement by wishing the tributes luck. Winston of 1 immediately entered the cornucopia clearing and was the first one there. He climbed onto the cornucopia and drew his sword, while standing triumphantly, seemingly waiting for tributes to enter the clearing. On the other side of the arena, Wade removed the bandages from his hand, wiped some blood from his cheek, and picked up his trident. He took multiple deep breaths until rain began to pour down onto him. Although he seemed excited upon seeing the rain, he also noticed that many storm clouds had formed in the sky. Wade performed a 3-finger salute before sprinting towards the cornucopia. Viscera had jumped down from her tree and consumed all her food. She then grabbed her sword and performed a 3-finger salute. This caused obvious outrage among viewers, but before cameras could cut away, Viscera loudly told all of Panam that peacekeepers had murdered Michelle. Peacekeepers tried cutting away from Viscera. However, all of Panam had heard the message. Immediately, people from the districts and the capital began to exit their homes and riot on the streets. This led to peacekeepers killing 2,874 people and wounding 7,429. Big boy numbers. Back in the arena, Viscera had run towards the cornucopia, but a drone the size of an apple was seen flying towards her. The drone fired several bullets at Viscera, while cameras were pointed away. However, Viscera surprisingly dodged them. She then entered the cornucopia clearing, which saw the drone make a U-turn, as it had been programmed to avoid the cornucopia clearing. In the clearing, rain began to increase. However, Wade, Viscera, and Date had all managed to touch the cornucopia before the 30-minute timer expired. The three outliers looked towards each other and whispered that they would take on Winston alone, wherever he was. The three then broke into groups and searched for Winston. However, as Date was walking along, Winston leaped down from the cornucopia and stabbed her in the chest. Date screamed, causing Wade to appear around the corner of the cornucopia. Upon seeing Date being stabbed, Wade threw his trident into Winston's head, killing him. He then retrieved his trident and ran over to Date. As Viscera approached from the other side, both seemed very cautious. However, at that moment, a large boom was heard from the roof of the arena as the rain turned into sparks. The three remaining tributes seemed to ignore the hovercraft. However, Date performed a three-finger salute before stabbing herself in the neck with Winston's sword. This caused even more obvious outrage in Snow Square, but Wade and Viscera had both jumped back and were now facing each other. At that moment, Wade asked Viscera if it was true that peacekeepers had killed Michelle. Viscera nodded and began to tear up a bit. Wade gasped and asked what had happened to Lasso. Viscera honestly answered that she did not know, but he would definitely not have cheated. Wade looked slowly at Viscera and opened his mouth to speak, but at that moment, the hovercraft that had entered the arena exploded and crashed into the lake. Wait, is there a missing slide? Several missiles came into view and bombarded the hovercraft. The cameras did not show this, but the tributes appeared to notice. At that time, the audio was muted, but exclusive footage showed that Game Maker Blanco had made an announcement telling the tributes to climb onto the cornucopia. Wade and Viscera looked at each other and agreed, but this was followed by a coughing sound entering the PA. More exclusive footage showed that Game Maker Blanco had been punched by President Flickerman. President Flickerman then made an announcement, stating that if the tributes did not kill one another, one of them would be chosen at random to win, and the loser would be executed. His announcement was also cut short, as the rebellious peacekeeper fired several bullets into his head. The tributes seemed very confused as to what they should do, but before the peacekeeper could make an announcement, he was shot in the spine. Viscera looked towards Wade, and although both were listening to the sounds entering the arena, Viscera seized her chance and stabbed Wade in the neck. Wade turned around and looked wide-eyed at Viscera, who cried as Wade fell off the cornucopia and onto the ground below. A lot of thunder preceded a cannon, and an anonymous peacekeeper announced into the arena that Viscera Maddox of District 10 was the victor of the 108th Hunger Games. This announcement was ignored, as most capital citizens were too preoccupied with getting killed or rioting. Those who had seen this happen on TV were shocked to see that another hovercraft entered the arena. But this hovercraft was unlike any capital hovercraft. The missiles fired at the hovercraft exploded before they could reach it, taking out the firing spots as well. The hovercraft bore a green flag that did not belong to Panem, and through the unmuted audio, peacekeepers were heard to shout, "Stop that hovercraft." Viscera screamed at the sheer sight of it. However, the hovercraft approached the cornucopia, and Viscera was picked up by a deathclaw. Once Viscera was safely inside the hovercraft, another hovercraft entered the arena. However, the hovercraft containing Viscera fired several missiles at the new one, causing it to explode. The hovercraft then flew through the hole into the arena and exited into the blue sky.